Welcome back, deep divers. Ready for another deep dive?
Always ready to explore.
Great. So today we're tackling something pretty close to home for us Californians.
I think I know where you're going with this. The San Andreas Fault.
You got it. I mean, we all hear about the big one constantly.
Right, it's always looming in the back of our minds.
Exactly. But today we're going beyond just the headlines and the fear-mongering. We're going to dig into the science, the history, really understand what's going on beneath our feet.
I like it. Get a little deeper than just worrying about the next big shakeup.
Exactly. And to guide us on this little adventure, we're turning to Data Time and his YouTube video, Disaster in California. I went to the San Andreas Fault. Have you seen it?
I have, and I gotta say, this guy's approach is pretty hands-on.
Oh, absolutely. He literally goes and stands on the fault line.
One foot on the Pacific plate, the other on the North American plate.
I know, right? Talk about a visual. It really hits home that this isn't just some abstract concept.
Oh no, it's very real. A massive crack in the Earth's crust, running right through our state.
Okay, so for those of us who maybe skipped geology class, can you break down what exactly a fault line is?
Well, imagine the Earth's crust like a giant jigsaw puzzle.
Okay, I can picture that.
And these pieces, they're called tectonic plates, and they're constantly moving, shifting, bumping against each other.
And sometimes those pieces don't quite fit together smoothly, right?
Exactly. A fault line is basically the crack where these plates meet. And the rocks on either side, they've been pushed past each other over millions of years.
And in the case of the San Andreas Fault, we're talking about the Pacific Plate and the North American Plate.
Right. Meeting and grinding against each other for over 800 miles, right through the heart of California.
That's a lot of grinding. So something that surprised me, and I know a lot of people might think the same, is that the plates are actually moving super slowly.
Oh yeah, it's not exactly a high-speed chase.
The video mentions an average of like 1.5 inches per year.
Yeah, about that. But here's the thing. It's not a smooth, constant movement.
Oh, I see. So it's more like...
It's like pressure building up over time. Imagine a pressure cooker.
Oh, okay, I can see that. It's slowly building steam, and then eventually...
Oh, boom. That pressure has to be released somehow, and that's when we get earthquakes.
So it's not the constant inching along that's the main problem. It's the pent-up energy waiting to be unleashed.
Precisely. And the longer that pressure builds, the more powerful that eventual release is going to be.
Makes you think twice about those tiny tremors we barely even notice, huh?
Definitely makes you realize that there's a lot more happening beneath the surface than we might realize.
And what I love about this video is it takes you on a visual journey, like a road trip along the fault, showing you all the evidence of this incredible force.
Yeah, it's a great way to make it tangible to see the impact in the landscape itself.
Like there's this part where they're driving, and suddenly there are these two completely different types of rock right next to each other.
Oh yeah, I remember that. It's a stark contrast, right? Like, they don't belong together at all.
Not at all.
And that's a prime example of how the fault's movement has literally reshaped the landscape over millions of years. Those rocks were dragged along by the shifting plates, ending up side by side even though they formed in completely different environments.
It's amazing to think about. And then between those rocks, there's this weird ground-up stuff.
Ah, yes, fault gouge.
Fault gouge, right. So what is that exactly?
Imagine rocks being pulverized into dust by the friction of the plates grinding against each other. It's like a giant slow-motion rock crusher, creating this strange, almost clay-like substance.
Wow. So it's not just theoretical. You can actually see the evidence of this incredible force right there on the surface.
Absolutely. And the San Andreas Fault has left its mark on the landscape in many other ways. One of the most dramatic is a feature called Elkhorn Scarp.
Oh, yeah, they show that in the video, right? It's like a giant cliff, almost like the earth just cracked open.
It is a pretty dramatic visual. And what's fascinating is how the shifting plates have not only fractured the ground, but also rerouted entire waterways. The video uses Wallace Creek as an example.
Wait, so the creek had to change direction because of the fault?
Yep. Imagine a creek flowing naturally through a valley.
Okay, yeah.
And then the fault cuts right across its path, forcing it to make this sharp turn.
So the creek's just flowing along, minding its own business, and then bam, the earth moves.
Essentially, you can actually see it from above, the creek making these crazy zigzags because of the fault.
It's kind of like the earth itself is playing a game of connect the dots with the water. And it's not just creeks. They mentioned a place called Soda Lake, which was actually formed because the fault trapped water in a valley.
Exactly. The San Andreas Fault has literally shaped the water features we see today, creating unique environments like Soda Lake.
Okay, so we've got this slow-moving but powerful fault line leaving visible evidence across the landscape. But of course, we can't talk about the San Andreas Fault without talking about earthquakes. I mean, we all know about the big one, but the video also talks about the 1906 San Francisco earthquake.
Right, and that event really stands out. A turning point, both in California's history and our understanding of earthquakes. A 7.8 magnitude earthquake. I mean, the devastation was unimaginable.
Thousands of people died. Something like 80% of the city was destroyed.
It's hard to even grasp the scale of it, really.
It's almost like this ghost story we tell ourselves here in California, a reminder of what could happen. And what's even more unsettling is that the last major earthquake to hit Los Angeles was over 300 years ago.
A long time ago. And we don't even have records of how big it was.
Which means that tension has been building along that southern section of the San Andreas Fault for centuries now.
It has. And according to the Uniform California Earthquake Rupture Forecast, there's a very high probability of a major earthquake hitting Southern California in the next 30 years.
Really? How high are we talking?
Well, they predict a 100% chance of a magnitude 6.0 or greater, a 75% chance of a magnitude 7.0, and even a, get this, 7% chance of a massive 8.0 earthquake.
Okay, those are some serious numbers.
They are.
So living in California really does mean living with this risk. It's not a matter of if, but when.
Exactly. And that's why understanding the San Andreas Fault isn't just about fascinating geology. It's about understanding the risks we face and how to prepare for them.
So it's not just about surviving the shaking, it's about surviving the aftermath.
Exactly.
And that's where things get really interesting, but we'll dive into that in just a bit.
Because the aftermath can be just as challenging, even more so in some ways, than the initial shaking.
I can imagine, yeah.
Think about it. Transportation networks could be crippled.
Right.
Communication systems down. Shortages of food and water. Medical supplies.
Yeah, it paints a pretty stark picture. So let's talk about preparedness. What can we do to be more, well, resilient?
Well, the video highlights the importance of having an earthquake kit, a collection of those essential items to help you cope in the aftermath, survive.
And one of the most crucial elements, water.
Water. Yeah, makes sense. I mean, we all need it.
Exactly. The general recommendation is 1 gallon of water per person per day.
Per day. Okay.
Now, I know that might sound like a lot,
Yeah, it does.
but remember, you could be without running water for days,
Yeah.
maybe even weeks.
Right. So we're not just talking about drinking water either.
No, you need it for cooking, cleaning.
Hygiene.
You got it.
Okay.
And next up is food.
Yeah.
Focus on those non-perishable items,
Okay.
the ones that don't need cooking.
War.
Refrigeration,
Right.
canned goods,
Yeah.
energy bars, dried fruit, nuts. The video even mentions having like a bucket of freeze-dried food,
No way.
25-year shelf life.
Wow. Okay, that might be a bit extreme for me, but I get the point. It's about thinking long term.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Be prepared for the unexpected. And while we're on the topic of preparedness, light.
Light. Right. Because power outages are almost guaranteed. They are. Flashlights are absolutely essential.
Definitely makes sense. What about fire? Because I remember you mentioning that a lot of the damage from the 1906 earthquake was actually caused by fires.
It was ruptured gas lines.
Oh, right.
Downed power lines can easily spark fires.
Yeah.
So having a fire extinguisher or even fire blankets in your kit, it's crucial.
Okay, good tips.
And of course, a well-stocked first aid kit. That's a must-have.
Yeah, of course. Now, this one might seem a bit old school, but the video really stresses having a radio.
It does. And I think in our hyper-connected world, we kind of forget about those low-tech communication devices.
We do?
But when those cell phone networks are down,
Right.
internet services are out. A battery-powered or even a hand-crank radio can be a lifeline.
Yeah.
You can receive those emergency broadcasts, stay informed.
That's a good reminder. Sometimes the simplest tools are the most reliable. Now, this next one might seem a bit, well, awkward to talk about, but the video mentions liquid waste deodorizing powder.
I know, right?
I mean, what?
But think about the potential sanitation challenges
Yeah, true.
after a major earthquake.
Right. Not having access to running water.
Exactly. Being able to manage waste effectively can make a huge difference.
It's about maintaining a sense of normalcy, I guess.
Yeah.
Dignity, even amidst a crisis.
Right.
It's all about being practical and thinking through those less glamorous aspects of survival.
I appreciate that this video doesn't shy away from those details.
And ultimately, that's what preparedness is all about, being practical,
Right.
proactive,
Uh-huh.
taking control of the things we can control. It's not about panicking. It's
Yeah.
about empowering ourselves,
Says us.
facing the unknown.
I love that perspective.
And by taking these steps to prepare, we're not just protecting ourselves,
Hmm.
we're contributing to the overall resilience of our community.
Yeah, that's a good point. So it's not just individual survival, it's about collective well-being.
Precisely. And that brings us back to the San Andreas Fault itself,
Mm.
understanding its history,
Yeah.
its mechanics,
Uh-huh.
its potential impact.
Yeah. That's the first step towards building a more resilient future.
It's not about living in fear,
It's about living in awareness.
being aware.
Absolutely.
Well said. I think this deep dive has been incredibly insightful. It's given me a whole new perspective on the San Andreas Fault, what it means to live in California. And I gotta say, I'm feeling a lot more empowered knowing that there are things I can do to prepare.
That's the spirit. And as we wrap up this exploration of the San Andreas Fault, I want to leave you with a final thought-provoking question.
Ooh, I love those. Hit me with it.
The San Andreas Fault is slowly creeping northward,
Right.
shifting the landscape,
Mhm.
inch by inch, year by year. So here's the question. If this movement continues for millions of years, what will eventually happen to the landmass west of the fault?
Whoa. Okay, that's a big one. I have to think about that. It really puts things into perspective, doesn't it?
It does.
Like, zoom out from our human perspective.
Yeah.
Consider the vastness of these geological processes.
It's humbling.
It really is. The San Andreas Fault has been shaping California for millions of years, and it will continue to do so long after we're gone.
It will.
So, to bring it back to us here and now, what does all this knowledge about the San Andreas Fault mean for you, the listener?
Well, it's not about living in fear of the big one. It's about understanding the reality of where we live and taking steps to be prepared.
You know, it's funny. I used to think of earthquakes as these random, unpredictable events. But after this deep dive, I'm starting to see them as part of a much bigger story,
Yeah.
a story that's still unfolding.
That's a great way to put it. The San Andreas Fault isn't just a crack in the ground. It's a dynamic force that's constantly shaping our landscape, our history, and even our future.
And while we can't control when or where an earthquake will strike,
Mm-hmm.
we can control how we prepare for it.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power, and by understanding the San Andreas Fault, we can make informed decisions about where we live, how we build our homes, and what steps we take to protect ourselves and our loved ones.
So it's not just about surviving an earthquake. It's about thriving in a place that's prone to them.
Well said. It's about respecting the power of nature while also embracing our ability to adapt and build resilience.
Well, deep divers, we've covered a lot of ground today. From the geological mechanics of the San Andreas Fault to the very real risks and what you can do to be prepared. I hope you found this deep dive as fascinating and eye-opening as I have.
It's been a pleasure sharing this journey with you. Remember, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe out there.
And on that note, we'll sign off for today. Until next time, keep exploring the world around you, both above and below the surface.